welcome to Ask Deb About Business. I am Ron Gayoso, co-host. We're broadcasting via Futures Television, the home of the future on television. If you're listening to the show via podcast or watching us on TV, you too can be part of the conversation. Just visit our YouTube channel, and that is IMCI Magazine, where we continue to chat about the topic of the day. You can also access this information on our website, and that is www.futurestelevision.com. So don't be shy. Today, our topic is effective innovation strategies for SMBs. For many of us, innovation and creativity are often used synonymously, but they're not the same. For an idea to be innovative, it must also be useful. Creative ideas don't always lead to innovations because they don't necessarily produce viable solutions to problems. And innovations don't have to be major breakthroughs in technology or new business models. They can be as simple as upgrades to a company's customer service or features added to an existing product. Today, we're discussing the importance of innovation, how it allows adaptability, how it fosters growth, and how it separates businesses from their competition. But before you can innovate, you have to clarify the problem, generate ideas to solve that problem by conducting research, develop potential solutions, and implement those solutions. There is a lot to talk about on this topic, but worry no more. Now, you have someone to talk to. But I have to say a few words about the show. This show, Ask Deb About Business, is broadcast live from Butterfield Studio in Chicagoland to the world. The talk show is broadcast every other Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time, where I join Deb Dietz to discuss a variety of business topics. No matter what your venture is, you will certainly have questions. So worry no more. Now you have someone to talk to. Let me say a few words about Deb Dietz. Deb has a long and distinguished career as a coach, mentor, and through her awesome training programs at SMB Digital Education, she has enabled many entrepreneurs to follow their dreams. And that's what I like about her. It's her ability to deliver practical advice to help you solve real problems. Have a business question? Well, let's ask Deb. Without further ado, let's welcome Deb Dietz to the show. Hi, Deb. How are you?
Hi, Ron. Great to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to see you in the beautiful studios and
Butterfield
how
Studio.
wonderful
We're
studios.
happy
Uh,
to be here. Absolutely. And I wanted to also just welcome our audience. We're happy that you're with us today. Our show focuses on emerging trends, challenges, and opportunities facing small to mid-market businesses. And we invite subject matter experts on our show who help us understand those emerging trends and issues and opportunities. And my promise to you is that by the end of our time together today, you will have at least one key takeaway that you can implement within your own business. And I'm delighted that today our special guest is Hector Barresi. Hector has a great background working with multinational corporations and small to mid-market businesses, helping them innovate, helping them develop new products, helping them improve their operational efficiencies, innovate through the use of technology, and we're delighted to have him with us today.
how wonderful. So let's say a few words about Hector. Oh, righty. So Hector Barresi is a two-time award-winning innovation expert who helps industrial companies create and commercialize breakthrough products, software, and services worldwide. Prior to his career as an expert and consultant, Hector held executive positions with prestigious blue chip companies like GE, IDEX, Honeywell, and Danaher for more than 15 years, and has transformed global organizations across the world to create effective and collaborative teams that consistently exceed their business targets. Today, Hector offers a wide range of programs and services, from individual consulting and coaching to workshops, seminars, and keynote speeches. He helps CEOs, product development executives, and teams to apply the latest technologies like IoT and artificial intelligence and develop innovative and differentiated products. His proven processes and systems generate rapid product demand and sales. With an MBA and certifications in Six Sigma and the Toyota system, Hector applies lean enterprise techniques to maximize effectiveness and cost. Hector has lived in Germany, France, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and Argentina, and is currently located in the US in Chicago, Illinois. He speaks and helps clients in English, Spanish, French, Italian, and Portuguese. Well, without further ado, let's welcome Hector to the show. Hello, Hector. How are you?
Hello, Ram. How are you? And hello, Dev.
Good to see you, Hector. I'm so happy that you're with us today. I love the conversation we're going to have because you and I have talked about innovation and the criticality of businesses and their ability to innovate, create new value for their customers, improve their operational processes. And I think we should start there. You know, some companies are very good at innovating, others not so much. What is the common denominator of those that are innovating and do it well? What is it about those companies that kind of sets them apart?
Yeah, exactly. First of all, thank you again for having me here today. It's a real pleasure. Share some of my humble experience for my career. And that's a kind of make or break question that you're asking me, right? Why some companies do succeed and some fail. And I always talk about innovation as a combination of a few things, right? That help some companies that realize those things really succeed. And obviously, for you to be a successful innovative company, you need to understand, first of all, what are the needs out there. No matter what kind of industry, business to business, consumer goods, electric cars, cell phones, or industrial automation, you need to understand what are the key unresolved issues out there of your customers. If you fail to understand that, you are already in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. Assuming that you understand those needs, those problems that your competitors cannot resolve or the existing solutions cannot resolve, then you have your path to figuring out what to do. The second element is you need to have a process, a system, to use that information and transform it into something that ultimately will yield innovative solutions to resolve the problem. Right. So you need to understand the problem. Then you need a process and a system to put this information through. And third, you have to have a team of people that use all that information, that apply the process, and ultimately produce something that is different from the past. You really need to move the needle. You need to create value from this innovation in order to succeed. And some people believe that by just adding buzzwords like IoT plus artificial intelligence plus ML, machine learning, etc., they are going to innovate. And many of these companies fail because they missed the customer problems. They process this information in probably not the most effective way, and then the team didn't have the right abilities to productize that, right? And a lot of my work really goes into helping companies, number one, do the right, call it voice of the customer, for example, to get deep into the unresolved problems, ask the right questions, understand the outcomes that the customers are failing to accomplish. Second is really put that into a format that the engineers can understand, because one of the problems is that the customers speak one language. The engineers that develop the product speak a different language. So let me explain that. If you speak to the customer, again, doesn't matter if it is business to business or business to consumers, they will tell you their problem in their words, meaning, my company cannot produce enough product, or my supply chain has a problem, or the quality is bad, or my cost is too high. This is the customer's language. And then you go, and the engineers, right, they want to develop a product and they say, I hear the customer, but this is like Chinese to me. I don't know what I mean by their cost is too high. I have to develop a product for them, a machine, a sensor, a piece of software. How do I understand that customer problems in engineering terms? So there has to be a process to translate customer problems language into engineering language so that you can successfully productize something that ultimately goes back. And then there is another trick, which is you need to translate the story, the value of this product, again back into the customer language so that they understand it. And the best way to do that is to kind of use the same words that your customers told you 6 months before in the voice of the customer when you put together your sales strategy, right? But again, there is this circle of customer problems, turning that into something that can be productized, give it to the engineers so they understand in a language that they can understand, make this product, then launch it again. The companies that manage that, and master that process, that have the process, the people, the ability to hear, to listen, those are the ones that succeed. They're the ones that just combine buzzwords of technology into something that they believe is innovation. These are the ones who
fail. It's interesting because when I'm hearing you say that, and I'm thinking probably one of the most critical success factors here in your ability to innovate is by understanding those needs and those dynamics in the marketplace and within your customer or client base. So leveraging business intelligence so that you have an understanding of what those issues and challenges are, number one. And I think, at least in my experience, I think where a lot of organizations are unable to innovate successfully is they're looking, I call it kind of within the four walls of their business, the internal data points. They're not necessarily looking externally or at the external forces that are facing their business. What are their competitors doing? How are their competitors adding value to their customers? What are those business challenges, issues, and opportunities? And then how can you as a supplier or a vendor capitalize on those needs or those challenges or those pain points? And so to me, I think, probably the starting point for most businesses, and I want your feedback on this, is that the right place to start? Is by embarking on, business intelligence initiatives, market research, competitive analysis, talking to your customers, as a starting point to even be able to identify what some new innovative products or services could be. And then ultimately you have to have the process in place in order to implement and execute. But is the starting point doing the research?
There is no doubt. You always need to go from the 10,000 feet down to the 10 feet. And some companies are much, I would say, effective at understanding those dynamics out there on the market.
Okay.
And then from there, kind of targets. You cannot develop a product that satisfies everybody on the market. But you have to identify trends. And for example, if you are in the business of, let's say, enterprise manufacturing software, right, which is called EMP, everybody knows today that companies are trying to become more effective manufacturing, in stock management, cost reduction. But if you are smart right now and you use that business intelligence, you would easily realize that supply chain issues are monumental today because, hey, we have wars, we have viruses around, we have all sorts of earthquakes and floodings, and no matter again if it is the chips for your Tesla or your Ford Bronco or for your Samsung telephone, we know that there is chip shortage out there. Sheet metal for machine manufacturing is really another problem. So if you are in that kind of business, you will certainly I would start doing my voice of the customer with customers around supply chain issues. Mm-hmm. But you have already a very strong starting point. 90% of the customers that you will ask, do you have a problem with supply chain, will say yes. Now, some companies have been doing that very effectively. There is a startup called Interos, and they understood that intelligence already several years ago, And today, they are like a $1 billion organization. Why? Because what their product does, and this is a very creative way, again, of using technology and artificial intelligence, they monitor hundreds of thousands of companies around the world, and they monitor events, wars, earthquakes, floods, new viruses. Now monkeypox is emerging, right? So the product they offer to their customers is predictive supply chain.
Okay.
And they have thousands of customers who say, okay, can you predict 6 months from now, if my chip is going to be available, when it's going to be available, is there going to be a shortage? And they use artificial intelligence in the smartest possible way.
Right.
They gather all that data, and then they correlate it, and then contextualize it, and they say, well, based on what's going on out there in the world, the wars, again, all, this is what you should be doing. You should be stocking all these products. There's going to be a shortage here. And I think that's a fantastic way to start with some business intelligence around what's going on out there on the market, some key issues, and then bringing it down to something very specific, which is in this case supply management, and developing the most effective solution, which is truly innovative. And they, as far as I know, they have very little competition, so which is another point of innovation. Innovation is not just about putting great product out there that everybody can copy, is how can you differentiate and keep the differentiation long enough to grow.
Right, because you're not the only one who's looking at those trends and gathering this intelligence, right? But your ability to take that in and looking at those external forces that facing, this issue, you're, looking at, maybe you're in an industry that's government regulated, or, what's going on in the economy, supply chain. So you really need to kind of take an inventory of all these external factors, determine what a viable solution is. So that's step one. Then step two is going through the process of development and making and differentiating your solution versus someone else's. So, to me, that process of gathering the information, analyzing the information, developing the solution, making sure that just because you have a great idea, not all ideas are created equal, right? So there's no shortage of ideas out there to innovate, but then how do you prioritize, some versus others? And then how do you actually implement and execute? Because I would think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in your experience, for those companies that don't innovate well, their ability, maybe they're great, ability to generate the idea and put a plan together, but they're falling down, there are shortfalls in the ability to implement or get team alignment, allocate their resources effectively so that they can execute and ultimately have the impact that they're looking for. So, is that kind of another, critical success factor is you have great ideas serving a need in the marketplace or within your client or customer base, but then your ability to actually develop the solution, implement it, differentiate it, make sure it's relevant, and that there's economic value. That to me, if you did all that, very well, those are the ones that succeed.
Succeed,
right?
And that's a situation that has caught by surprise many what I would characterize brick and mortar companies, where they have to transform themselves to embrace innovation in a different way. Right. Companies that were used to innovating around, we're going to put a new pump here, a new compressor, a new valve, or a new chassis, and now they have to innovate through digital transformation, right? So one of the companies I helped with was exactly in that situation where they had no engineering talent to develop all the software side. They were developing a smart machinery with IoT connectivity and predictive maintenance, and they had electrical engineers and they had mechanical engineers, but they didn't have any data scientists, they didn't have really software engineers, and they were really struggling. So when I jumped in, so we really had to get really hands-on very quickly at transforming that organization and bring the right talent, the right experience. We have to use some external UX, user experience, and CX, customer experience companies to help them, because the software was not that I would say, that experience that you as a user would enjoy using those applications, those
right.
software. And it's critical today not to forget the user experience.
The user experience.
It's another make or break when, what makes great companies, understanding how the users use.
So what you're saying, so when you're putting together, I'll just say the business requirements for a new initiative like this, you have to have that lens of the customer experience in mind to making sure that, it's not, just not the engineers in a room developing a solution. It's how the customer, the end user is going to, utilize that if it's a piece of software, and what does that experience need to be, and putting that perspective into the business requirements that you then are maybe handing over to your development team.
Correct.
Is another critical success factor.
It is,
Okay.
and we need to get used to testing and iterations,
And feedback, right? And then going back out to your customers.
Feedback, iteration based on the feedback
Right.
with the users,
Right.
because some companies rush out to
First to market, right?
my president wants me to launch this product, so I'm going to launch it, right? So here it is. And how many failure products do we have out there on the market, right?
Right.
And when you go back, there's a lot that has to do with the user experience. Either it was not understood, or the customer didn't like what it looked like, difficult to remember, to use, to memorize. It was not intuitive. I don't want to use the user manual. So all of that has to be tested. And companies that are in the innovation, sometimes, especially the ones that come with true breakthrough products, they do have to do some level of testing, because if it is something that never existed before, you don't have a true benchmark.
Yeah, Hector, I have a question. I'd like to remain on this point a little bit longer. So you mentioned, and you're reinforcing the issue of, the voice of the customer, right? And then you have the engineering, so we don't speak the same language. So what are some of the barriers that you see? So why is it that there is that communication link is somewhat broken? We know what the voice of the customer is,
Yes.
but the engineers want to go do something else. So in your perspective, what are some of the, the failures, or, what are some of the barriers that we have to take down in order for that communication to take place?
Yeah. But I'm very glad, because that was kind of a missing link that I wanted to touch today. Is first of all, there's nothing wrong. The customers speak their customer language. The engineers speak their engineering language, because they have to use that as those specifications, those requirements to develop the product. And this is where marketing, product marketing comes in, and sales comes in, because they bridge. They are the ones, the sort of the translators, whatever goes lost in translation between the two worlds, the customers and the engineers. This is where a true effective product marketing organization demonstrates their effectiveness. And I've led a lot of product marketing organizations in many countries. And I had to spend a lot of time making sure that my team, the product managers, were able to execute this voice of the customer so effectively with the customers. And we brought engineers into the meetings. So we would be in front of a major, let's say, oil and gas company or power generation, food and beverage, for the voice of the customer and our interview. And it was me, it was the product manager, and it was one or two engineers. And the engineers were astonished to hear, those words that they said, man.
It's a different language, right?
This is a different language. But that was very productive. So bringing the engineers to the field, let them then speak with the customers, is one way to do it. But let me say again, the languages are different for a good reason, but marketing, product management has that particular specific role to build the bridge and go back and forth and validate.
So having those people, having kind of a cross-functional representation on maybe your development team would be another best practice, right?
That's another best practice.
So you've got people, maybe you're going through, you've got all these ideas to innovate. You've got to go through kind of a vetting process of how you're going to prioritize those ideas, right? But then bringing in the appropriate resources across the organization who are going to be able to provide input and a different point of view, right? And so that, because what you're ultimately looking for is alignment across that team, right?
Alignment.
Yeah.
Couple more comments. First of all, it's not that easy, in my experience, to take an engineer to the field. Why? Because the VP of engineering is saying, okay, I have allocated hundred of hours or whatever number of hours of this person to this project.
Right.
Now he's going to be out in the field for 1 or 2 weeks doing voice of the customer interviews. Number one, who is going to pay for the hours? Number two, this is going to affect the development of such and such project. How is that going to work? So, I mean, what I'm suggesting here is one way to do it. Let me tell you, it's not that easy to do. Second, one voice of the customer, again, doesn't define the product. You need to be able to speak to a number of key accounts, key stakeholders out there in the market, customers. And then you need to be able to sort through the requirements. Not everybody scores the same things with the same value.
Same way, right.
So it's important to have a prioritization process. And most of us are used to, the musts, the nice to have, the needs, the wants.
Right.
There has to be always a process to prioritize those requirements that the customer have. Again, this is always about outcomes that they want to accomplish.
Right.
Don't ask your customer how many inputs and outputs does this product have to have, or how many megahertz or megabytes of memory. The customer's role is not that, right? The customer's role is to tell you their job, what they are trying to accomplish, what outcome they want to accomplish, and they are prevented from accomplishing, where you can bring your solution and unlock that.
So what's a great way to measure innovation? How do you measure all this?
Yeah, right. And there are some, I would say, more traditional ways which finance department uses, and then I think that the ways that you measure really innovation. So you can go back to the old times where product vitality was used, still used by many companies, right, to measure innovation, which is what percentage of your sales in the last 3 years came from new products, versus all products. And you have companies like 3M, Danaher himself, who said, well, my target is about 45%, or whatever the number is. And they drive their innovation machine to that. Now, what's the problem with that? That today, when that cup, for example, the mug there, and you change the color and you make it beige rather than white, and now that became a new product, right? And it's not. Right. So you are cheating to yourself. You're pretending that you're innovating. And some companies, they take pride that they're very innovative because they
can check the box.
They check the box, they add a screw, they change the color, or they move the connector, and they call that a new product. And that doesn't help the company. So, it's a traditional way to measure innovation.
Well, to your point, you get what you measure, right? So if you're going to measure that,
again, I've been in companies where corporate wanted to see a number at the end of the quarter, and we met the number, but not necessarily through innovation.
Well, you may, right. Again, you can check the box, and and I do strategic planning for a living, so I'm very familiar with strategic plans that have the performance measurement scorecards, and one of those key objectives on the plan is, to your point, literally number of new products. That for that period of time, for that annual plan, and every quarter they're reporting out. But at the end of the day, that's one measure, right? But then the real measure is, what is the impact? What is the revenue?
Exactly.
Right. So what is the opportunity cost of doing this versus something else? And so it's got to follow through in your business strategy and your performance management initiatives, so that you ultimately will deliver something that is got the voice of the customer, that's a meaningful new product or service development that's going to generate revenue that your customers see economic value in.
Correct.
And that will drive your performance.
Correct. So you need to switch your measurement from being internal to external. Like you just expressed it very correctly.
Internal to external.
Because other companies, they take pride that they have 565 patents, right? Patents is another way to internally measure innovation. That again doesn't necessarily translate into an impact. So how do I measure really through innovation? Is, like you said, through the impact on the industry, to the impact on the market, through changing radically the way things are done, and through true value to the customer. And true value to the customer is, in general, improving productivity, reducing cost, helping the environment, to be a cleaner environment. Right. Typically, if you're in B2B, what are the clients, the customers of my customers feeling? If I can help my customers to have themselves happy customers, this is where innovation comes really to play.
How important is it for the executive leadership to drive this innovation process in
Well,
business?
that's an important question because it depends. First, let's not forget that the executive leadership is instrumental in failure of success of innovation, right? If you have, all the way from the CEO down the ranks, an organization which is reluctant to innovation, it's not going to be easy, right? You need really change agents in the organization to drive that. In my experience, when the company starts seeing a decline in sales, in market share, I've seen that happening, things change and people start looking at strategic planning. How are we going to do this now differently? How are we going to innovate? I have a case of a blue ocean strategy where I proposed to one of my employers to change radically, to do what nobody had done before. We were in the industrial sensors business. Every sensor up until there was with a cable, with a wire, like a microphone. And I proposed to get rid of the cables and do it wireless. At the time that wireless was taboo in the industry, it was only for cell phones and at the very beginning. And they said, you're crazy. We're not going to do this because nobody else is doing that. And it's probably not a good idea because if nobody else is doing it, it's probably not a good idea. Right. Not even our competitors are doing that. And I said, well, that's why it's probably a good idea. And I put together a team of 15 different people in the organization. And we did all our due diligence, the voice of the customer, again, looking for all the problems that the current technology was leading to. And it was all about lack of data, broken cables, fires, a lot of issues that wireless would resolve. So I put together such a compelling story that we were in the middle of strategic planning and saying, here it is. And still, the management was saying, no, we don't believe it. So I kept going up to the CTO, to the chief technology officer, and I sold the idea to this person. Long story short, we did the product, we launched it, we were first on the market. We became the de facto standard. This company now is making hundreds of millions of dollars after 3 generations of new products. And we got, this is where I got my award, by the way. It was a fantastic success story, but I had to fight the management, my boss's boss.
Right. So fear is a real issue, right? And so fear and change, the fear of change, right? So people, we talk a lot about, the status quo. People are very comfortable in the status quo. Innovation requires you stepping outside of that comfort zone and embracing, in many cases, maybe embracing new technology. I mean, we're living right now in a digital age where 80% of all sales transactions are occurring in digital channels. So I know that you a lot of your experience is in leveraging technology to innovate. So, what words of advice would you have for, small to mid-sized business owners as to how they can leverage technology and have that technology drive, growth or help them with operational efficiencies?
Yeah. I think, first of all, the good news is that small and medium-sized organizations are more likely to succeed because they don't have such a heavy legacy like more large organizations have.
The hierarchy, the legacy, right.
So I think that's a good starting point.
Okay.
But second, I analyzed a number of innovation projects and digital transformation projects and the causes of failure and success. And number one, don't just do, my advice, don't just do it just for the sake of doing.
Right.
Oh, we need to create an innovative product. It has to be digital. It has to have SaaS in it, or it has to have artificial intelligence. That's the wrong side. First of all, you need to understand, what is the problem that you are going to address, right? And then you have to validate that. You need to go to your customers, validate your idea, identify the unresolved problems that nobody else has been able to resolve, your competitors, or the best existing options, because this is where you have to start. and don't bundle. This is not a a sundae or or an ice cream mix that you put ice cream and bananas and strawberries.
It's not a
and you drink
sundae,
it.
right?
So you do need to be smart enough to pick the right technologies to resolve that problem, because you have now so many.
You're not innovating, technology just for the sake of innovating with technology, right?
Correct.
It's got to be the right
you
solution.
don't feel obliged to
Right.
put everything in the bag.
Right.
AI, again, all the buzzwords, SaaS.
Right.
But start from the problem, validate the problem, pick the best technology. And this is a secret that is happening right now, because IoT, all these digital technologies typically require that you work with partners. There is a partner for networking, there is a partner for AI, there is a partner for cybersecurity, there is a
It's
for
that ecosystem,
hardware.
right?
You need to build that ecosystem.
Yeah, you have to build that ecosystem around
you.
you.
And
Okay.
again, whether you're small or big, doesn't matter. You still need all these companies. Why?
You need
Because-
access to the expertise
because
that you
the
don't have
expertise,
internally. Yeah.
You need to realize, and again, put the ego apart,
Right.
all your history, this is not us kind of the thing, or we own the IP. Put all that aside, and find the right partners, put together the right technology, and now build a team of engineers in-house that can develop that. And then, when you have this product ready, communicate it properly. Because again, you may have a great product and you launch it in the wrong way. Mm-hmm. You miss the story. You sell it to the wrong customers, and your product may still fail. It could be very innovative.
It could be, you could be off on your messaging. You could be off on how you're positioning it in your target market. I mean, there are so many variables, right, that are involved that impact success. So, what I'm hearing you say is that if you are able to bring in those, I'll call them ecosystem players, kind of early into the process, maybe even including your marketing people, your sales people, your engineers, earlier up in the process when you're vetting ideas. So and you're doing the due diligence, so that they're part of that process early on, right? So that they buy into it, and then they ultimately work together to deliver that end solution, and then ultimately you're handing this off to your sales team, right, to move forward and then have that impact in selling it. So what are some best practices to prepare your sales team to be able to then take all this great work that's been new product service that's been developed and hand it off to sales and let them go do what they do best?
They're kind of the last link.
They are.
When you're around
exactly.
the
So how do you prepare them
cycle.
to be successful?
And again, small, medium companies, if they're used to selling physical products, brick and mortar products, if they are used to coming with a brochure and saying, okay, this is my
the features.
These are the features. This is my machine.
Right.
This is the space that you require. This is how, and it has so many inputs and outputs. First of all, the buyers are changing. The buyers are evolving. As the older generations are retiring and the new ones are coming, everybody has to be aware. The new buyers are the Google buyers, are the iPhone, the guys that.
That's right.
Right? And they are used to a different approach to sales. And most of the buyers would have done a lot of already online research before they call you. Right. So the fact that they call you means that they already know quite a bit about your product. So, and there is a lot of work to do with the sales organizations when they have to transition from the physical to the more innovative, call it connected products. Some of these products now have connectivity, and they send data through the internet about the value, right, that all this innovation brings. And again, it has IoT connectivity, Wi-Fi. Everybody assumed that. I mean, that's not the value of the differentiation.
Right.
It's really
it's a transformation that it can bring to your business.
How is this new technology, Mr. Salesperson, going to help me again improve my top line?
Exactly.
Improve my bottom line. I'm thinking that I need less training for my...
How it's going to help me improve my performance
And
as
if
a
again,
business, right?
I want to spend less in training my people in using this equipment. I need to reduce the inventory. I need to increase sales. I need to be able to connect this machine to e-commerce storefront. So I've been doing, and I don't call it anymore sales training. I call it really sales enablement, because it's so different the way that you now prepare your sales force to address these new buyers. And some of the buyers now are the IT guys.
Right.
It's not anymore.
Since your buyers are different than they
Peter
used
or
to
John
be.
or some,
And what they value is different. How you communicate to them is different. So to your point, you have to understand kind of who your target audience is, and they're not homogeneous. They're a diverse group of end user customers, and you have to be specific about how you're positioning the value through your messaging, through your branding, positioning, all that. And you have to look at that in its entirety, because it's not a one size fits all.
It is not. And again, going back to your point about building the team, in the sales process, the IT person is the one that may be the showstopper, right?
Right, it could end there.
And they say, okay, the cybersecurity or the firewall doesn't matter, or it doesn't comply with whatever standards. So what are you going to do now? Now you have to go back to your engineering team, and tell the IT person, look, I'm going to put you in contact with my engineering team so that you guys can clear any questions, any technology issues, any cybersecurity, encryption. So again, you have to keep this team engaged, the engineering guys and the sales organization and the marketing, because now it's a different model. It's a different model.
It is a
with
different
different
model.
stakeholders on both sides.
It's interesting because there are different stakeholders, and I think if I were to ask you, kind of who wears the hat of innovation in a business, what functional area is driving that or accountable to that? Is it the sales team? Is it your marketing team? Is it your IT team? Who is actually wears the hat, or who should wear the hat?
Who should wear it?
Yeah.
And again, different companies assign that to different organizations. I've seen companies that are heavily on the engineering side.
Okay.
Other organizations are very heavily, and they have now CPOs, chief product officers positions.
Yep.
And others have the traditional product manager with your product management. And I think at the end of the day, we have realized it's a combination,
It is a combination.
right? But everybody has very clear, specific roles that they can't miss.
Okay.
In this whole cycle. And let's not forget manufacturing, because design for manufacturing is absolutely critical.
Yes.
Because you need, especially physical products, right? You need to be easy to manufacture. They need to deal with supply chain problems. They need to deal with cost. You need to deal with approvals and certifications. So everybody really has specific role. That's why I was mentioning to Ron before that there's nothing wrong about two languages as long as everybody does what they are supposed to do. Right?
Well, let me ask you this question, because I know you have a lot of experience also in product management, portfolio management, and we're dealing with, in my world, working with small to mid-market businesses. Oftentimes, those businesses don't have large operating budgets, right? So their ability to fund innovation is challenging. So they have to go through this process of looking where they're currently spending, looking at their current portfolio, products and services, looking at the investment that they're making there, how are they aligning their human resources, their financial resources. But they have to do some work before they can even innovate. They have to go through a portfolio management process to find out where they should be curbing investment with existing products and services in order to enable the funding for innovation. So, and I do work like this with clients, and that's always a challenge, especially for smaller businesses. They don't have robust budgets, and so looking at, so what thoughts or recommendations would you make for those who are who want to innovate, who believe that they have a potential solution or an idea for a solution that could have a positive impact, but how are they able to fund that? And what are some ideas for how they may be able to do that when they don't have, big budgets?
Yep. And a couple of ideas there. First of all, product life cycle management, product road mapping, product management are absolutely critical to any company. Again, whether they're small, medium, or large, you cannot escape, the need to have a very robust product life cycle management. And going to your question, especially connected to your strategic planning.
Right.
If you are lucky, you have a strategic plan, which is not just a bunch of PowerPoint slides, which is something which is executable,
right,
and is really looking into where the company wants to grow.
right.
And if you're lucky, that company will give you some priorities as far as what your products will look like,
Right.
because strategic planning could be about, we're going to go into this territory or about this geography or about this market, but should also include also what kind of products you're going to need,
Of course.
right, to win. And if that will give you the first sense of priority, right, as to what your product line has to be. But this is just the starting point. If you have a product life cycle management which is robust, you will have mapped the life cycle of each of your products. This is an exercise that most companies should do at least once a year. Go back to their life cycle and where they are. Again, not because it was launched 5 or 3 or 6 years ago. It's really about, are we still climbing in sales? Is it flat? Is it declining?
Exactly. I think, for the purposes of our audience, to be able to say, if you're, in order to do that effectively, the ability to kind of go back and maybe 3-5 years and do a trend analysis, right? Or you're looking at your sales trends, you're looking at your margin trends and saying, and mapping, your portfolio on this quadrant that says that at some point you're going to say you're going to have products or product categories where you're seeing sales decline over time and margin declining over time. And by going through that exercise, before you're thinking about new products or new ways to innovate, you're looking at what you need to stop doing, and then you do the math. How many, what's the cost of our human resources that are focused on that part of the portfolio? What are the financial resources? And then you add all that up, and that becomes savings, if you will, that then can say, hey, here's an opportunity then to redeploy those human resources, those financial resources from current products that are not providing the return over here. And so I think that's we talked about key takeaways. That could be a good key takeaway for our audiences to do just that, is go through that, that life cycle analysis process, the product mapping exercise, pull your numbers together and find out what potential savings you may have. And that, I think, would be helpful to SMBs out there who do have an opportunity to innovate but can't fund it quite yet.
Correct. Doing it the other way around is finding a new idea, and now who am I going to kill as a product is definitely the wrong idea.
Right.
Sometimes looking at the existing portfolio and the products that are not doing well will just give you the next idea, because, if I build the next generation of this existing product, which was good, but now it's falling behind because of lack of features or whatever, that's already a starting point, right? Or you decide maybe eventually to discontinue for something better.
Well, exactly. But you may find that if you've gone through this portfolio analysis process, you may find that you've got products that that are worthy of turning around, or enhancing, in order to have a greater impact. So you're right. So there are going to be ideas for up-leveling existing products and services, or killing them altogether, right? Yeah. And then doing doing the math, and then making a determination of how you can then fund the new products and development.
But obviously, you want to keep the old one, the new one. You want to fund the development of the new product. you can keep the old one, increase the price. This is for the famous cash cowing.
Change your pricing
Because
strategy.
it's what? Many customers may have contracts with you that say you need to keep this product alive for the next 5 years. So you may not even be able to kill it.
Right.
I say, okay, I'm not going to kill it, but it's going to increase by 20% as of next year in price. So, and another way to fund the new development.
Another way to fund development, but then on the flip side of that is you may find that you've got that there are products that are, you know, they're not really right for your business model, but you may continue to offer them anyway because they're legacy products, right?
Yes.
You've got customers, long-standing customers, so but you're going to make that decision, you know, proactively and leveraging, you know, data, right, and analysis so you're making the right decision for the right reason. And so, but to your point, you know, there are going to be those that are you're going to continue to maintain those products regardless of the financial return.
Another way to do it is, and this really depends how you negotiate that with your good customers, is you co-share the cost of new development with some customers. Sometimes they may be willing to contribute to the development. They may ask for exclusivity for a couple of years, but after that you're free to sell it to the broader
I like that.
Customer base. And typically this is easier for a smaller company than it is for big companies that have a bunch of lawyers and you know, a lot of contract problems, etc., about co-sharing cost. But for smaller companies, it's more doable, and they have this dialogue with the customers, the good customers. I think.
I wanted to stay at this issue of having the right products. I wanted to ask you one final question. So about having the right product for the customers. So what happened to Nokia, Kodak, or you know, Polaroid, you know, BlackBerry, Motorola? You know, they all lost their edge and failed.
They did. And in fact, because on one side, there is always like talked before about this ego side of things, sitting on their laurels, believing that they were the owners of the market share, but also denial. Denial, in the case of Kodak, the fact that the digital photo were coming and assuming that, you know, film would continue. Nokia believed that because they had like 60% market share at some point, they will continue. What happened with that is that you shut your senses to what's going on out there on the market. You forget to listen to the customers, right? BlackBerry, they thought that because they had this hardware keyboard. That was what business people wanted. And I think to your question, Ram, I think is the fact that, number one, arrogance or ego. Second, you shut down your senses. You lose contact with what's going on out there on the market. And that, you know, once you realize it's too late for you to recover.
But that kind of really brings it back to what how we opened our conversation today was that business intelligence and paying attention to what's going on around you and that ecosystem around you, and not having the kind of the blinders on to the trends that are occurring and how you can capitalize, and as a result missed a lot of opportunities and failed, lost their edge.
And what the market did or wanted 2 years ago is different today. It used to be very different, you know, especially for industrial products. Okay, we have a life cycle of 10 years, and then we were sure that after 10 years the customers were kind of ready for the next generation. But now, this is different. Even the industrial customers are looking for, you know, new ideas all the time. Why? Because they have new problems all the time.
See, that's exactly right. There are new problems
Look
happening.
at, you know, ESG, for example, environmental, you know, social and governance. And I wrote an article recently about the use of artificial intelligence. Why? Because up until a few years ago, ESG was, okay, kind of a fancy word, but now it's kind of mainstream.
It is.
But people find that it's really difficult to do manually, a lot of data in a bunch of different systems. Nobody can contextualize and correlate, so we are looking at artificial intelligence. But 2 years ago, people who said ESG is no important.
See, and it's right, and it's here. It's not even on the horizon. It's here.
Correct.
So, Hector, I wanted to thank you so much for chatting with us today with Ram and I. This is such an interesting topic. We'd love to have you come back for a take 2, and maybe we can drill down on some of these topics in more detail. And just a delightful conversation.
Absolutely,
so thank you so much for
I'm
being
really
with
passionate
us.
about this.
Oh, I know. And Ram, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Wonderful. Let's summarize to make sure we understood all that Hector said today. So I think number one, we discussed the three pillars of successful innovation process and how to measure innovation effectiveness. Leverage new technologies like IoT, AT, etc., to create more innovative products. New products can still fail, so plan, test, measure throughout the development and the launch process. Executive management is critical to driving a culture of innovation, leading to the creation of breakthrough products. Be mindful of how the fear of change can affect innovation. Ask the question, do the research of what the customer wants when designing a new product or service. Identify where the responsibility for innovation lies within your company. Not all innovation priorities are created equal, so you can't possibly satisfy them all. Prioritize by quantifying market need and opportunity, demand, and focus on those innovation strategies that can drive increased business performance. Successful new product launches don't occur by happenstance. You need an effective new product launch plan. Your sales team is critical to success selling innovative products. Include them early in the development process and leverage them as you test market prior to launch. Be mindful of how you communicate with the engineering team to clearly state the customer's desired outcomes that will drive the creation of new products. And finally, reflect back on what happened to Nokia, Kodak, Polaroid, Motorola, BlackBerry, and the others, that they lost their edge and failed. Even for small and medium sized businesses, there are lessons to be learned from the big guys who failed. Take those learnings and determine for yourself which are the most relevant to your business. So, again, uh, Hector and thank you so much for the
Thank you for having me.
conversation today. And muchas gracias, Hector.
De
For
nada.
you
Thank you, Hector.
folks, uh, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you learned something new about effective innovation strategies for SMBs. Please share your comments with us and let us know what your key takeaways were from this show today. And let us know where you're watching us from. So, Hector, before we sign off today, how can people find you if they would like to connect?
Yeah, thank you for asking. There are a few ways to contact me. One is the most obvious is through LinkedIn. Look for Hector Barresi. And also, I have my company profile on LinkedIn, which is Sextant International, so you can both be found on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, which is www.sextant-international.com, and from there you can either find my email address, phone number, but also through Calendly, you can schedule an exploratory call so that we can chat about your needs and how I can help you. Okay, so these are the different ways that the audience can get a hold of me.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our upcoming shows. So on August the 25th, our guest will be Sweden's own Katarina Hansen Carlson, sharing her insights on are we truly preparing our children for the future. On September the 8th, our guest will be J.D. Gershbein, discussing pioneering the next frontier on LinkedIn. And on September the 22nd, our guest will be George Sullivan, sharing his insights and recommendations about climate change, sustainability, why you and your business should care, and steps you can take. Folks, it's time for us to say our thank yous and very especially to Butterfield Studios. So, Ask Deb About Business is recorded at Butterfield Studio in Vernon Hills, Illinois, located at 1000 Butterfield Road, Suite 1007. Again, in Vernon Hills, it is located just 25 minutes north of Chicago's O'Hare Airport. With its 7,500 square feet customizable staging and broadcasting space, the studio, with its full service production and broadcasting team, is sure to service your next conference, game show, product launch, and brand activation. You name it. Ask Deb About Business, the hosts, and future television. Thank Butterfield Studio for making this show awesome. We love you guys. Again, thank you so much for watching the show with us today. And we hope to see you again in one other edition of Ask Deb About Business. I will leave you with our institutional message. Thank you.